The notification popped up at exactly 3:17 a.m. That's when I knew something was wrong. I remember the blue light of my phone cutting through the dark, the way my pulse kicked up the second I saw it. My hands shook as I unlocked the screen, my fingers slipping once before I could finally read the message from Facebook. Your post violates community standards. Just like that, no explanation, no details, just a cold, automated judgment. 24 hours earlier, I'd written 7 words that would ruin my life. It doesn't matter who's right, just stop the bombing. That's all it was, a plea, really. A desperate, stupid plea for peace in the middle of another pointless war. I'm a history professor. For God's sake, I've spent my career studying conflict, analyzing the patterns of violence, watching how the same mistakes repeat themselves. I should have known better than to think my words would change anything. But I never expected this. The notification wasn't just a warning, it was the beginning. Within minutes, my inbox was flooded with messages. Some were angry, calling me a traitor, a coward. Others were worse, vague, threatening, the kind of stuff that makes your skin crawl. And then the comments started. People I'd never met, faceless accounts, attacking me as if I'd committed an unforgivable crime. By sunrise, my post was gone, deleted like it had never existed. But the damage was done. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Strangers, former colleagues, even a few students, all demanding to know why I'd taken a side, as if wanting children not to die in airstrikes was some kind of political statement. I should have known. History never favors the ones who beg for mercy. The pounding on my door came just as the first gray light of dawn seeped through my curtains. It wasn't the hesitant, polite knock of a neighbor asking for sugar or the distracted rapping of a deliveryman. No, this was something else entirely. A relentless, mechanical thud 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 like a battering ram, shaking the doorframe. Each impact sent vibrations through the floorboards. My heart hammered against my ribs before I even registered what was happening. The pounding on my door came just as the first gray light of dawn seeped through my curtains. It wasn't the hesitant, polite knock of a neighbor asking for sugar or the distracted rapping of a deliveryman. No, this was something else entirely. A relentless, mechanical thud 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 like a battering ram shaking the doorframe. Each impact sent vibrations through the floorboards. My heart hammered against my ribs before I even registered what was happening.
Olya Petrenko.
He said my name like it was already an indictment, not a question, a statement, a verdict. Behind him, another agent moved with practiced efficiency, his gloved hands already at work. He didn't wait for permission. He just entered, his boots heavy on the creaking floorboards. I followed his line of sight. My bookstore-geared history textbooks, well-worn volumes on Soviet Russia, pages bristling with sticky notes and underlined passages. Evidence of what? Of study, of curiosity. It didn't matter. His gloved fingers traced the spines before he pulled out his phone, snapping methodical photos. Each click of the shutter was deliberate, like he was cataloging my guilt.
You're under investigation for spreading Kremlin propaganda.
The words sounded like a sentence. No explanation, no warrant. Just the weight of the accusation, heavy and final. The third officer stood silently, a looming presence by the door, cutting off any thought of protests. I could hear the rustle of their equipment, the quiet beep of a radio transmission somewhere on their belts. And just like that, my home wasn't mine anymore. It was a crime scene, my book's evidence, my thoughts suspicious, my life under examination, all before I'd even had my morning coffee. They took my phone first. Just reached out, gloved fingers closing around it before I could even react. No warning, no explanation, just a silent, practiced movement, like they've done this 100 times before. The screen was still lit up, with my last notification, some trivial message I'd never get to read now. The officer didn't even glance at it before sliding it into an evidence bag, the plastic crinkling as he sealed my entire digital life away. Then came the laptop. I'd left it open on the kitchen table, the screen dark but still warm from use. One of them, I couldn't tell which, their faces all blurred together behind those masks, snatched it up, yanking the charger from the wall with a sharp pop. The cord whipped against the tile and I flinched at the sound. They didn't care. They were already moving, already cataloging, already treating my home like a crime scene. And then they took my dignity. That was the worst part. No rough hands, no shouted orders, just the quiet, efficient humiliation of being let out in nothing but my nightclothes, slippers scuffing against the hallway floor. No one spoke to me. No one even looked at me. I was just evidence now, another problem to be processed. As they dragged me toward the unmarked van, dark, windowless, the engine already running, I caught a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye. Mrs. Litvin, my neighbor, peering through the gap in her curtains, just a sliver of her face, pale and wide-eyed, watching. I almost called out to her, almost begged for some kind of recognition, but then the curtain twitched shut. No wave, no gasp of concern, just silence. Later, in the interrogation room, cold fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, they showed me the screenshot. A social media post, my profile circled, Mrs. Litvin's comment highlighted in sickly yellow. The detention center hit me first with its smell of thick chemical reek of industrial cleaner trying and failing to mask the sour tang of sweat, urine, and something else underneath, something damp and rotting. The fluorescent lights buzzed, like trapped flies overhead, casting a sickly glow over the peeling paint and stained concrete. For 45 days, they kept me in a concrete box no larger than a parking space, crammed with 6 other so-called digital collaborators. The air was always stale, thick with the heat of too many bodies and the acrid scent of unwashed skin. Some of the women were actual Russian bots. I could tell by the way they spoke Ukrainian. Their sentences stilted, their grammar just slightly off, like they'd learned it from a textbook and not from life. They rarely looked anyone in the others were just like me, tired mothers, women who had done nothing more than beg online for their sons to be sent home from the front. I recognized one from a Telegram group. Her profile picture had been her boy in his uniform, smiling, before he'd been shipped east. Now her hands shook constantly, her nails bitten down to the quick. The guards called us the Wi-Fi traders, their voices dripping with contempt. Every morning, they lined us up against the cracked plaster walls and made us recite patriotic slogans, glory to Ukraine, death to the enemies. They watched our lips move, searching for hesitation, for any hint of rebellion. Only then would they toss us our daily ration, a single slice of mold-speckled bread, so stale it cracked between my teeth. The worst part wasn't the hunger, or the cold, or even the fear. It was the silence afterward. No one spoke. No one dared. We just sat there, listening to the distant echo of boots on concrete, waiting to see what they'd take from us next. They let me go on a technicality, not because the law was on my side, not because they believed I was innocent, but because my sister spent her days stitching up soldiers in Bakhmut, her hands raw from hours of surgery, her uniform caked with other people's blood. Her commander was pulling strings, calling in favors. Maybe he owed her something. Maybe he just didn't want his best field medic distracted by a brother in prison. Either way, the papers were signed, the cell door creaked open, and in the blink of an eye, I was free. But freedom came with conditions. The courtroom smelled of old wood and dust, the kind that settles into the grain of benches and never leaves. The judge was a gaunt man, his skin yellowed like the pages of a forgotten book, his fingers stained with nicotine. He leaned over his podium, his breath thick with the sour tang of cheap cigarettes, and beckoned me closer. When he spoke, it wasn't a verdict, it was a warning. Post about sunsets, he whispered, his voice low enough that the bailiff wouldn't hear. Post about kittens, share recipes. Talk about the weather. His eyes, watery and bloodshot, locked onto mine. But if you ever questioned this war again. The silence that followed was heavier than any sentence. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, each second measured, deliberate. Somewhere in the back of the room a clerk coughed. The judge straightened, his robes rustling, and waved me away with a flick of his wrist. I walked out of that courtroom with my freedom, but it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a leash, one I'd carry for the rest of my life. Every word I typed, every post I shared, they'd be watching. And next time, there wouldn't be a sister in Bakhmut to save me.